disclose something, and this is where Susan's worried because I'm going off script. So I'm going rogue, Susan. So I have to just let you know, as New Englanders, that our speaker is coming from Three Rivers area, so that's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Steelers country. She's also played a really integral part in the Chiefs dynasty, where through her knowledge of nutrition and exercise performance and injury prevention has given, in my opinion, the Chiefs an unfair advantage to succeed. So she's also met Patrick Mahomes, who, by all accounts, is a nice guy, right?
He is.
Perfect. So, but that all being said, I got the pleasure of driving Leslie from Portland, so an hour and 40 minutes, and she had the displeasure of answering all my questions. So I think we talked about everything from Bigfoot, aliens, string theory, and quantum physics, and she entertained me the whole way up. So she's fantastic. You're in for a real treat. So I will read to you some of Leslie's bio. She's MPH, RD, CSSD, LDN, FAND. What's an FAND?
A funny girl. No. Fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
Okay, so
That means that you've been there forever, and they have to give you a title because they don't give you anything else.
so that's your show-off title, right? So you had 4, you needed 5, so people like me with 2 feel really, bad about themselves, and I get it. 5 Super Bowls to 2, I got it. Yeah. So she's a she's a registered dietitian, board-certified specialist in sports dietetics, and is the owner of Active Eating Advice, Be Fit, Fed, Fearless, a nutrition consultant company and co-founder of Performance 365, a sports nutrition consulting company. Again, she was the sports nutrition consultant for the 2020, 2023, 2024 Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs. And it's a pleasure to introduce Leslie Bonci.
It's really a shame that you're just such a shy crowd. It's like, I love this. This is awesome. This is me. I work this way. And because we now have the Queen in the room, and Queen is one of my favorite groups, we will rock you. All right, we're going to do that this morning. And we're going to talk about food from the standpoint of reflection, from the standpoint of respect, from the standpoint of control what you can, because there's a lot of things out there that we cannot, and one of the things that we can is the hand-to-mouth activity, is the physical activity. Remember, if you put those stretch bands on, do not walk around because you're probably going to fall, all right? So be careful with that. But there's so much contention out there in the world of nutrition right now. It's what I call the sinfluencers occupying a lot of the social media space. And sometimes it's really important to tune it out and to think about what is going to work for you. People use the term precision nutrition. I hate that. It's decision nutrition. You make the decision about what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat, how much you're going to eat, how you're going to eat. Right? All of those things are a component of eating. So it isn't just the food that's in front of you, it's all of the eating habits that surround that. And at this time of the year, especially beginning of January, where people say, oh my God, oh, I need that last cookie. Let's clean out the freezer so they're not around. This kind of a thing. And then we're going to be really good. So we're naughty, and then we have to be really good. And what does that mean? It means people eat things they don't even like because they're trying to be really good. And I'm going to discourage you from that. And we're going to talk more about what it really means to nourish and to nurture your body. And I say that not just based upon that's my philosophy, and it is, but also because there have been some studies that have been done that when people think I'm going to eat healthy foods, and first of all, there aren't healthy foods. You eat in a healthy way. It's not a healthy food per se. But, so it's like, all right, that means that I'm just going to do maybe some plain lettuce, like, boring, and maybe I'll put a piece of chicken on it, but doesn't have anything on it. So it's kind of bland, and you're eating it, and you're crying while you're eating it. And they've done studies that have looked and detected brain waves of people who are eating that way, and it's like flatline. There's nothing going on because the body's like, what the hell were you thinking? And meanwhile, then there's this little voice on the side saying, you want the cheesecake. And so That is why we don't have to be so extreme with eating. Being extreme doesn't work. It doesn't work for exercise. It doesn't work for anything because it's temporary. And I'm all about sustainability. And yes, that's sustainability for the environment, for the resources, but it's also self-sustainability, and that means that it has to be attainable and maintainable before it gets to sustainable. So let's get into this, shall we? Okay. There we go. So the idea of this is healthy selfie. That can be another hashtag. I am on social media all the time. I don't always love it, but I am because I kind of have to. My kids get mortified by it, which is precisely why I do it. It's also why we had children, so we could have grandchildren. And I let them know that every day. The only reason that you were born is because you gave me the princess and the princes in my life right now. Our older son and his wife live in Exeter, New Hampshire, so guiltily I'm here. And it's like, are you visiting? Code 4, can you come babysit so we can go out? It's like, I'm sorry, this is grandma time. So, at any rate, we're going to talk about the idea of living swell, because that's a positive word. I mean, wellness is a good word, but swell is even better. I'm swell. Not swole, like I'm lifting a lot and I can't fit through the door. It's swell is what we are talking about. So, we're going to start that with this idea of the your do list, and I based that upon your beautiful logo of what does that mean? Your moves. What do you do for physical activity? I saw a couple of you in the gym this morning when I was there. You look just like my daughter-in-law. My was like, oh my God, Maria! No, it's not. Is that not your name, is it? No. Okay, all right, okay, exactly. And that idea of what we do, because it isn't just, oh, it's good for me to change the way my body looks, or it's good for my lungs, it's good for your brain as well. And we know this. The blood just doesn't flow down, it flows up. So any movement, which sometimes sounds like a much more positive word than exercise, it really is critically important for us to keep us vital so that we can be hale, not frail. That's the goal. We want to age swell. Secondly, to choose what it is that we put into our mouth. Each one of us in this room might have particular things that we have to watch, be it allergy-driven, be it an intolerance, be it a food preference. All those types of things are part of what makes up the foods that we put into our body. The third, your snooze. Yeah, sleep is critically important. And we know that we all have a lot on our plate. There's a lot that occupies up here, and sometimes it's really hard to just tone it down, to just chill, and to just relax. The idea of having a smart heart. February is coming soon. I always talk about February being National Heart Month. What about the other 11 months of the year? We don't have to think about it. Yes, we do. And so all of those things that we do with eating should really have effects from head to toe, not just one body part. We're not like a chicken. We're not just the legs or the breast or the thighs or whatever. It's the whole body we think about. And then this idea of the thrill of the chill, which isn't just eating frozen foods. All right? This is about finding that time to relax. And honestly, when people have that constant dialogue going on, this is good, this is bad, I should eat it, I shouldn't eat it, what are we doing now? That takes away from the ability to relax. It's just too much of that, and we have to find the ways to tone that down. So the idea of a healthy selfie, I love the word resilient. It's a really important word for all of us, being resilient, having vitality. I mean, all of these things that help us be the best that we can be, because if we're not, it's really hard to ramp up that degree of energy for everybody we involve with every day, right? Working with kids is hard. I've taught at the University of Pittsburgh for a long time, and I will tell you, working with very, very large athletes, this is 2-year-olds in big bodies. It's exactly what this is. So we'll pepper some stories throughout of this. No, I've not met Taylor. And everybody on your table, you have these. I would call this a friendship bracelet instead of a friendship bracelet, because this actually, every time you have a bottle of fluid, you press one. So you kind of know where you are over the course of the day, right? So this is a good thing, your friendship bracelet. We'll talk about that more. Okay, so the first thing we need to think about is prioritizing our own personal health goals. You can't do that for anybody else. They can't do it for you. That is yours alone to set that agenda. Secondly, strategize an action plan for your own health care. And again, sometimes we're busy juggling everything else, taking care of everybody else's needs. It's, what about me? for all of the women in this room that are of a certain age. I like the word seasoned. I hate the word old. Even mature. It's like, that sounds like a prune. No. So the idea of if you are of an age where you need to have a regular mammogram, then damn it, do it. It is really important to do those things. We can't put them off. That is part of self-care. We need to minimize the stressors that impact our wellness. That doesn't mean that we live in a bubble because we can't, but maybe it's I'm turning off the television. I'm turning off my phone. I'm not getting an alert every minute of the day because that doesn't help us to relax. We need to optimize our own health agenda. And let me tell you all, there's no such thing as perfection. It doesn't exist with the way a body looks, with what somebody eats. You don't get a grade for that. You have to do it in a way that makes sense for you, that is affordable, with food that are accessible, with things that you can do on a regular basis. And we need to maximize the time we spend on self-care. Hey, blowing off the rest of the school year, I just need to have me time. No, we can't. But on the other hand, trying to schedule that into the day instead of all of those other things that are the must, this is the really important one to add into that agenda. So this is busy, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of things on here. The International Food Information Council does a survey every year around the United States. The website is IFIC.org, and it is terrific. There's some wonderful, wonderful information on there, even things to use in the classroom, caffeine calculators, and all of those types of things. And they asked questions about what people eat, about what they think, about trends with foods right now, and overall what people are trying to glean from their general trends of what they would like to have happen with their health. And across the board, and this is the 2024 one, so the most recent one, no matter whether we're talking about the Zoomers, the Boomers, the Millennials, the Xers, all of them, it's energy. That's the one. We all want that. Having spent 31 years in the NFL, 31, that's a hell of a long time. Certainly more time than some of those guys play, really. And when I told the Chiefs last January, I said, I'm done. My mother was very, very ill, and the traveling back and forth from Pittsburgh to Kansas City, both mid-sized cities, means not direct. Dashing through Atlanta, dashing through Detroit, trying to get a car, arriving there, and it's like, no, we don't have a car for you. We have a Ford F-150. I think, I'm getting a running leap to try and get into this thing, and just worried about driving on the highway is, oh, good God. All of it. It was too much. So I told them, I'm done. And the first thing they said was, just move to Kansas City. I said, no, not my home. And the second thing was, you need this for your resume. I don't think so. Yeah, so, no. So they do have somebody else now, and, they may win. They might. I really would like to see the Eagles win. I'm from Pennsylvania. And it's like, it's enough. Give somebody else a turn. We want to give somebody else a turn. And our older son, who married a lovely young woman from Melrose, Massachusetts, we bleed black and gold. I'm just telling you, not Patriots fan. And it's just kind of one of those things. So we'll see what happens. But back to this. So the top two, one, more energy, less fatigue, and the second one is healthy aging. How many of you in this room have aging parents or grandparents that's still alive? Let me tell you, and how many of you have kids? And how many of you have both aging parents and kids? All right, that's the sandwich, right? And it's not always a tasty sandwich. It's an exhausting one. And we see what happens sometimes with our parents. My dad passed from Alzheimer's in 2019, and my mom, same thing, in November of this past year. It is really, really hard to watch that. And so that isn't inevitable. And that is why the attention to self-care is so critically important, so that we can age well, age in place, do all the things we want to do. My intention is always to be the cool grandma, because that's the way, like Auntie Mame, it's kind of going to be that, and be running a marathon at the age of 90. Maybe it'll be my little sparkly glasses. I don't care. Everybody get out of my way. Let her go. So there it is. When I work with the players, my fantasy would be, it never happened because I'm not that tall, was to be leaning over, the end zone goalpost. Come to mama with a pork chop dangling from my hand. Really thought that could be a great, on the Jumbotron. They said no. But at any rate, all right. The other thing that's critically important about this survey is that taste remains the number one. From all the years this survey has been done, taste remains the number one. What is my take-home message from that? If it doesn't taste good, why are you eating it? And it doesn't make a lot of sense. How many of you have eaten rice cakes before? All right. How many of you think they taste good? All right. Because you might put something on it. Yes, there's peanut butter on it. Well, yes, because then that's what you take. Now, I don't know if you were aware of this, but a rice cake and a styrofoam cup are the same thing. One flat, one big. You know, if you pour water onto a rice cake, it becomes a cup. It's like a magic trick. There we are. For all of the years that there were fat-free foods that were out there, we remember that Entenmann's and Snackwell's cookies and all these things, the cardboard box tasted better than what was on the inside. And the fat-free cheese thing, oh, no. Pencil erasers, better, right? So, I mean, this is it. It has to taste good to us. And sometimes we hear the messages out there, well, just have 6 sticks of butter a day. Why would we do that? Or just eat a green by itself. Why? Or just have kale by itself. I love kale, but I just don't want it sitting there uninspired in a bowl. I'm going to put some curry with it. I might add some golden raisins and a little olive oil, and yes. So taste is the number one driver and always should be with the food that we choose. And then back to the energy thing, one other thing about this. We crave it, and there's a lot of products out there. Energy, Red Bull, it says energy drink on it, right? We can find all these sports beverages, those of you who have kids involved in sports. They say energy on them. Energy means calories. That's really what it means. So when you look at something that's like a sugar-free Red Bull, it has 0 calories. Where the hell is the energy coming from? There isn't any because it doesn't have any calories in it. So energy sometimes can be code for caffeine. That's the stimulant, not an energy. In other countries of the world, on products like that, it says stimulant drink, not energy drink, to really call it what it is. One of my prime examples of that, and I talk to high school athletes a lot, is things like the 5-Hour Energy. We've all seen them, those cute little things. You know, it's so petite, it's so cute, you can take it through TSA, all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, the 5-Hour Energy shots, when you look at them, they have 4 calories. Let's do the math. That's less than 1 calorie per hour. No, you're not going to be energized for 5 hours because you haven't consumed any calories. But what you have consumed is 200 milligrams of caffeine in 1 ounce, which means it's leaving the stomach very quickly, and then there it is. You're wired, but you're not energized. There's a very big difference between those things. So when we really look at ways to energize the body, we do that with the food that we choose, how we eat over the course of the day, and making sure that we drink enough fluid, which is back to this friendship bracelet, is why this is so important. And Susan told me that this group is really good about hydrating. I'm not seeing anybody with your water bottle to your mouth. All right, I'm just saying, right now, the eyes are saying, drink, drink, and drink. All right, we got to do that. Yay for the sips. Okay. So one of the, I like acronyms, I use them a lot because it helps me to remember things, is the idea of the CAN approach. So not because it's a can of something, although that's fine and we'll talk about that, but what does that mean to me? So the first one is consistency, which is really the hallmark of what happens with our fueling and our fitness. It's how often we do it. Does it make a difference if we do it once? No. If somebody says, I'm taking a multivitamin mineral supplement, I take it once every 3rd Wednesday, that's not being consistent. And you're probably not going to get any benefit out of it if you do it that way. Those of you that are on prescription medication, it doesn't typically say on the bottle, take whenever you want. I mean, it doesn't work that way. It gives you specific instruction. And really the same thing here. Consistency is key, not, oh, I eat a certain way Monday through Friday, and then all bets are off on the weekend. I mean, that isn't necessarily establishing consistency. The second is attitude. I have a lot of it. This year, my word is combatitude. That's it. Combatitude against all the crap that is out there right now. We are in big-time combatitude mode. And then the third, I'll be demure, nurturing. All right, so nurturing is important because a lot of times if we eat things and we don't really feel nurtured by it, we don't want to continue that behavior. We have to have the give back to ourselves in a positive way, not a critical way. Have to. Okay, so we think about the goal of eating, and what is it? Nourish to flourish. That's right, we know that fuel is sustenance. If we don't eat, we don't survive. But it really is more than that. What is the ROI for my why? What difference does it make? Oh, maybe I have more energy. Maybe I just feel better. Maybe I have a little bit in reserve, so if I decide I want to go out and move after work, I can. Right? That's what should happen. Secondly, foodie over feudie. Now, it's very interesting when people define themselves as foodies, as, oh, I'm a 5-star chef. I'm not a 5-star chef. Far from it. I married somebody whose parents had a restaurant. That was my criteria. I talk about food all day. You're on your own to fix it, or we starve. Kind of the way that it is. But there's a lot of information out there that would make us be foodies. This is bad. Don't eat this. What were you thinking? Are you out of your mind? And so we don't want to do that. And we really want to think about, didn't that taste good? That should be the goal. Third is feeling satisfied, not stuffed. And a lot of the research in this area is looking at satiety. It's a good word. It's that feeling that I have between times that I eat. One of the things that's very prevalent right now is a lot of people are on the GLP-1 agonists, the medications that are out there, and I work with a lot of patients that are. And one of the things that they will say is they have reduced food noise. So they're not thinking about food all the time. There's a lot of food noise out there that can bombard us every moment of the day. We want to try and find a way to quiet that, and one of the ways to quiet that is to think about how we eat. If I eat and I'm not satisfied, that noise gets a lot louder, doesn't it? Because if you didn't give me what I wanted, I'll show you later, and then there it is. We don't want to do that. And then the idea of permission over omission. A lot of what we see posted online is about what you should not do. I've been a registered dietitian for 44 years almost, so do the math. I am fossil fuel, really old. I am really old. But when I first started as a dietitian, I give these people a list, choose, avoid. Now, any person would say, everything I like is on the avoid list. So throw the paper away. We don't do that. Tell me what it is that you like to eat. Let's figure it out from there. If we just focus on the negative, it doesn't make us happy. We walk around with a frown all the time. People will say bananas are a bad food. What's bad? Turn it around, it looks like a smile, for God's sake. Bananas are fine. Nothing wrong with eating a banana. Nothing. Okay. The study as well looked at the fact of what people are doing in terms of their eating, particular eating plans. And so a little over half have tried some particular eating plan. It doesn't mean all the time. It means maybe dabbling in it. So what were the most popular ones? Number one, high protein. Now, it is important that we have enough protein. I will not doubt that for a moment. I think it helps us to live strong and age well. We have to. But do we need protein in our water? I don't think so. Do we need protein in our bubble gum? No, we don't. It doesn't have to be in every single thing that we include. Because what happens is, if the focus is just about protein, something else on the plate isn't there. There's only so much room on the plate. And I think people also are a little bit confused about what is a protein food. So, and I'll talk about that more a little bit later, but it also doesn't mean that we have to be using protein supplements. Some people do. Welcome to my world. I have a lot of people that want to do things, but I'm also a stickler for making sure that products that people take will not cause them any unintended consequences. I don't like surprises. Oh, you're banned because you took something you shouldn't. It's like, we don't go down that road. Absolutely not. Mindful eating. Now, we might think, well, that's fairly obvious, but how many of us, show of hands, you can close your eyes if you don't want anybody to see everything. Close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. So we can answer this question. How many of you would say that you've ever eaten where maybe it's just out of the bag, out of the box, sitting in front of the television, there it is. All right, that's mindless eating, right? That's what that is. We do that sometimes. But what happens is when our eyes are occupied otherwise, then we don't really know what we're eating. So this idea of intuitive eating is not a new concept. It's gaining traction because that's part of satiety. If our eyes are not involved in what we eat, then it's that FOMO. That's exactly what happens. When we see it, when we smell it, when we taste it, when we take the time to eat it, the body says, check, check, check. Ah, satiety. That's what we want to have happen. So a lot of time people will say, well, look at other countries of the world, and look what it is that they eat. And how can they eat all of these foods and everybody seems so healthy? Well, first of all, everybody's not, because there's a lot of people that smoke, all right? So that is an issue. But in terms of the food choices, part of it is the way the people eat. They sit down, they use utensils. They're not just occupied their eyes with something else while they're eating. Eating is an occasion, not just an obligation. And that is critically important. Third on this list is intermittent fasting. And just to define what that is that people who do this, sometimes it's called time-restricted eating, is they have certain hours of the day that they eat and other hours of the day that they don't. So, but that being said, people don't always change what they eat. They just change the hours that they choose to eat. So does it help somebody to optimize their eating? Well, not necessarily, depending upon what they were eating to begin with. Who can it be helpful for? Well, I work with people that will say they're fine during the day as they define that to be, and then after dinner, all bets are off. They just start eating until they go to bed. So if they decide that their cutoff time is no eating after 7 o'clock, then what does intermittent fasting do? It eliminates some of that excess eating. Right? That's what it does. But I think there's other steps beyond that are critically important. What it is somebody eats, not necessarily just the times that they eat. I'm working with a patient right now who his first time of eating is 11 in the morning and stops at 7 p.m., but he exercises for 3 hours in the morning fasted. It's like, no. So we're changing that time of eating in order for him to be able to have the fuel he needs to exercise. So it can work for certain people, but it really requires customization. All right. So some of the misinformation stuff that's out there, my favorite thing. I love to be a troll online. And, I do. I try to be kind, but I'm usually not. And I keep more thoughts to myself. If you could see the bubbles coming out here, it is just things that are posted. It's like, really? How would that work? Wrong. So the first one, eat clean. What does that mean? Wash your friggin' hands before you eat. That's what eat clean means. There's no other definition for it. Oh, I'm a clean eater because I just have chicken and sweet potatoes. What if those potatoes weren't cleaned? What if that chicken wasn't clean? I mean, this is it. It's a very, very strange definition without any substance behind it. There is none. Eat green with powders over food. Hey, I'm not going to have a salad. I'm not going to have broccoli. I'm not going to eat a green bean, but I'll just pour this powdered stuff into my smoothie. Not the same. It is not. It isolates some phytonutrients or plant nutrients from those foods, but it is not in any way, shape, or form equivalent to what somebody gets when they actually eat a fruit and or vegetable. Third, processed is bad. Okay, show of hands, how many of you had coffee this morning? It takes 46 steps, 46, from the coffee bean to your cup. Guess what that's called? Processed. That's what it is. How many of you are considering having chocolate on Valentine's Day? Or any day of the year? We just don't ever. All right, okay. Another processed food, because you do not eat the cocoa bean on the tree. It doesn't work that way. That is a process. How many of you prepare food at home? Okay? How many of you use a knife to chop your food? Okay? How many of you ever put things in the freezer? How many of you use a pan on the stove, put water in it, and cook the food? Guess what? All of that is processed. It is. So that is big. No, we shouldn't eat anything processed. And then if you walked into Hannaford's or Shaw's, what would be on the shelf? Not too much if we're going to take everything away. Part of the reason that foods are processed is for food safety. It's what they do. We are seeing food recalls are happening in a lot of places. And so we want to make sure that our foods are as safe as they can be. Yes, it's nice to do things from scratch. How many of you have unlimited hours in the day to prepare your food? Okay, so thinking about this, it's kind of this term over there that nobody should use any of these things, but we want to be real about what it is that we choose to do. And those of you that are coming to the breakout session, we're going to be using some processed foods. Oh my God. So I'm telling you now, so if you don't want to come, sign up for something else. All right, fourth on this list, gluten is bad. Gluten is the protein in wheat, in rye and barley and oats. My subspecialty is digestive diseases. I can talk about poop all day long, and I'll spare you the details here. But I will tell you right now that unless somebody has celiac disease or a diagnosed gluten sensitivity, there is no reason to cut that out. None. First of all, foods without gluten usually cost double the price. Like a gluten-free bread, they're not inexpensive. My celiac patients would say, why would anybody want to do this if they didn't have to? Gluten is the protein. So if people say, I'm going to cut all of this out, well, then you're going to have to find some other way to make up the protein from what it is you would have had from those foods. There's nothing wrong with rice, quinoa, corn, potato. Those are all substitutes for, but there's also nothing wrong with eating pasta or having bread or having cereal. Again, unless somebody has a medical reason not to. Dairy is bad. If you are allergic to it, if you have an intolerance, and even if you do have an intolerance, which means to the lactose or the milk sugar, there's a lot of alternatives out there on the marketplace in terms of foods and in terms of supplements people can use to help their body break down that lactose. Yeah, it is a kind of a one-stop shopping food. It is. It's a source of protein. It's a source of micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. If people are choosing fermented dairy products such as yogurt and kefir, there's also the probiotics that are in those foods. So, again, kind of this assumption across the board. Well, don't have it. Now, let me just tell you, as I work with a lot of young kids, and I'm always concerned about young kids growing well. Mike and I were talking about this in the car yesterday, is one of the things that the NFL started to do 3 years ago at the Combine is ask players about their eating history. And the reason we're asking is to try and get at the number of players who grew up food insecure. They're not tiny numbers. A couple of years ago when our rookies came in for OTA, so they were there in April, and one of them came up and he said, how much of this food can I take? I said, you can take whatever you want, honey. Have at it. Are you sure? Because I don't want to take too much, and I was never able to do this before. So when people start putting all of these restrictions on things that they shouldn't be eating, that's not a good thing, right? Take it away unnecessarily. If somebody said, I'm not going to consume dairy because some influencer said I shouldn't do it, but I'll use almond milk instead. They're not nutritionally equivalent. They're not. The protein content is significantly different. The vitamin and mineral content is significantly different, and the cost is oftentimes significantly higher. There's a milk made from macadamia nuts, and it says it comes from free-range trees. What the hell does that mean? What is a free-range tree? Oh, it kind of runs around like, here I am. It's ridiculous. But, oh, well, that's a good thing because it's a free-range tree. 0 grams of protein. 0, and per glass, probably $1.50. That's not a good ROI on your investment for the foods that you choose to use. Okay. Meat is bad. Right? Some people don't want to eat something that has a face. That's fine. But where's the alternative going to be? So it isn't just a question of what I take away. What do I replace it with? Is that giving me something equivalent? Because if it isn't, there's some work that needs to be done. Fat is bad. Well, people who do more of a keto-type diet eat a lot of fat. They do. We need fat in our diet. It's what makes foods taste good. That's the mouthfeel, that's the aroma. It's also part of that satiety to make us feel fuller for longer. But we don't need that to the exclusion of all else. And there are certain types of eating patterns that say, well, just use coconut oil. Coconut oil is one of the saturated fats that we say is atherogenic, not good for your heart. So thinking about this is that kind of like, this is good, this is bad, that type of a thing doesn't really work. We have to be a little bit more inclusive. And then the idea of detox. All right, there's products out there called colon blow. I don't think so. Absolutely not, right? No. The good thing is that our body is pretty darn smart about knowing what to do. It knows how to detoxify. That's why we have a liver. That's what we use it for. So all those other things that people take either make you pee more or poop more. Oh, I did this detox and I feel light. It's like, yes, because you're dehydrated, honey. That's why. Not because somebody is nourished well. So I would say instead of that term, I like restock. And maybe restock is the things we don't eat regularly that we should be doing a little bit more. In my next life, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. Okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit about fad diets, the things that are out there right now of what is most popular. First one, calorie counting, and it always has been, so people just kind of pick a number out of a hat. Okay, I'll eat 20,000 calories a day. Not that. Oftentimes, what happens when people do this, they pick a really low number, or they go on an app that picks a number for them based upon the metrics that you put in. The problem with that is that if somebody says, well, my goal is weight loss, what's it going to do? It's going to give you a lower number because it's trying to get you to the result. So if you're not eating enough, you're not going to have as much energy. You're not going to be able to go and work out. You're going to lose muscle, not just fat. The reality of all of this, the cold, hard truth here, is that the body loses 1/2 to 3/4 of a pound at the very most of body fat per week, unless you are going to a plastic surgeon and having it sucked out. That's kind of the way that it is. It isn't fast. So, but I lost 10 pounds in a week, so surely you're wrong. Well, somebody could have lost 10 pounds in a week because they lost a lot of water, the diuresis effect, and they lost lean mass. That, to me, is not up for negotiation. No muscle loss. We don't want to see that. So we have to make sure, if we're thinking about calories, that we ballpark it to what would be appropriate. You all have my contact information. You're free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to give you some advice on that. Second, the idea of plant forward. I like that term better than some of the other terms that we have out there. So when we talk about plant forward, what we're talking about is including plants as part of what we eat. So what constitutes a plant? It's a fruit, it's a vegetable, it's a grain, it's a nut, it's a seed, it's a bean. All those things are plants. Avocado, it's a plant. It comes off an avocado tree. That's a plant. So it isn't just about eating leafy greens. It's a little bit more robust definition and inclusive. Third, I talked about the intermittent fasting already. The gluten-free tends to be popular. Flexitarian is a term you may or may not have heard before. A colleague, a mentee of mine, Dawn Jackson Blattner, actually wrote a book, The Flexitarian Diet. It's probably maybe 10 years old at this point. And basically, it's saying you don't just have to eat plants or just eat animal foods. It's kind of that nice mix in the middle, which is what a lot of people do, although we might not necessarily define ourselves that way. So this idea of reaching across the aisle. Can we actually combine plant and animal foods together? Sure, we could do a stir fry, does that. I might do a stir fry with vegetables, and maybe I'm throwing in some shrimp, and maybe I'll add some edamame, and I'll have it over rice. Plants and animal, they're happily coexisting on the same plate. The idea of carb cycling. This tends to be a little bit more athlete-focused, although not always, meaning there are certain times that people tend to eat more carbohydrates, like Christmas, no, not. And then other times less. And the problem with that is that when people get really restrictive and then you reintroduce it in, one of the primary functions of carbohydrate foods, be it a fruit, vegetable, grain, it helps with fluid balance. That's why when people go on a really low-carb diet, you see that loss on the scale, because you're losing fluid. So conversely, if somebody says, I've been eating very, very low carb, and I reintroduce it back in, and you get on the scale, it's like, what happened? That's the fluid in your body, kind of feeling like the Michelin Man or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It's like, what is this? That is what carb cycling can do, and we don't always want to do that, because it really messes with our head. Not so much with our body, it just doesn't feel good. The idea of DASH, which is not just running, it's dietary approaches to stop hypertension. There have been a lot of studies that have looked at DASH Diet for Dummies. One of my colleagues wrote that book. It is great, and it is more, I would say, Mediterranean, but when I say that to you, realize that the Mediterranean diet comprises 21 countries, not just one or two, it's 21. So they're all a little bit different in the makeup of what is on the plate. And also, when we think about the Mediterranean diet, it's not just, I'm sitting down to bread and olive oil. That is not the Mediterranean diet. All right, so we talked about the cleanse and the detox, and the other one is vegan. And this kind of points back to the idea of plant-based or plant-forward. Yes, eating plants, but it doesn't have to be plants exclusively. I do work with people who eat vegan, so they're eating no animal foods at all, but they're not always getting it right. Some of my high school female athletes, I don't want to eat animals anymore if anybody watched some documentary or whatever. And then, what did you have for lunch? I had a salad. What was on the salad? 4 chickpeas, not 40, 4. and I got enough protein. Honey, no. So if somebody says, normally maybe I would have put chicken or turkey on the salad, and I'll do chickpeas instead, how much chickpea would you have to use? At least a cup, not 4 chickpeas, a cup. And so this becomes a concern is across the board getting the needs met. We can, but it takes a little bit of work to do that. Okay, so the characteristics of some of these things, a lot of it is about elimination. More with a fad diet is to focus on what you don't do than what you do, and that isn't positive. This idea of quick results. Lose 20 pounds overnight. How does that happen? Only if somebody comes into your home and chops off a limb. Otherwise, you are not going to lose 20 pounds, or you don't like the partner in your bed. Get rid of that person. Okay, 20 pounds lighter. There we are. Okay. The idea of testimonials or celebrity endorsement. Obviously, everything the Kardashians do is good. Wrong is, they're not even doing these things. Having worked in the NFL for a long time, these athletes don't use these products. They're just paid a lot of money to say, oh, this is great. Never would they use them. They don't. That's the endorsement thing. This rapid loss of water and lean mass, it can actually take our energy away. And the problem is not so much losing the fluid. We can put that back, but when we lose the muscle, we can't always put that back. And it's not just about losing the muscle per se. You can't necessarily see it outwardly. Oh, had a bicep, now it's gone. It's skeletal muscle. It's what's happening to the bone. We all need to support our supporting structure. Critically important to do that. A lot of these things is you don't eat all these foods and then you take a lot of supplement. That's not the same thing. That means you're eating a crappy diet that is well supplemented. It's a problem. We're not getting the balance. We should. It is also a very short-term focus. That's why it's called a fad. So we can't do it over an extended period of time. I remember when the cabbage soup diet came out and people tried it. First day fine, by the third day nobody wanted to be near you and you could not open up your refrigerator. It's like that book, The Stinky Cheese Man. What is that horrible smell? Not a good idea. All right. It may also exacerbate pre-existing health issues. Some of these fad diets that drastically decrease the fiber or drastically increase the fiber for somebody who already has irritable bowel syndrome or Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, they're going to end up feeling worse as a result of those types of things. There's absolutely no evidence of efficacy. I'm a registered dietitian. Evidence is really important to me. There's a lot of nonsense out there, and a lot of these things really fall in the nonsense category. They don't always recommend exercise. It's not either or. It's both together are critically important. And they don't think about eating habits or food preferences. You don't like tuna, too bad. That's Whole30 to make you feel really, really guilty and bad if you're not following the program. Nah, we don't want to do that. So the eating disablers are this elimination approach. I would always say this, no elimination unless there is medical justification to do so. No reason to do it. The all or nothing, it doesn't work. It's exhausting. This uploading calories, none of us should be eating in the shape of a Nike swoosh. Little, shove it in. All right, that's not what we want to have happen. That doesn't mean that the first meal of the day has to be the largest one, but ideally it would be a little bit more even distribution over the day instead of one time of the day where all the food tends to be. This eating above one's salary cap. Oh, I've got to buy these expensive foods or expensive supplements, and oh, guess what? Now I can't buy the other things I need. That's not doing your body any good whatsoever, and you end up with VEU, very expensive urine. Money down the drain in any way, every way. And then the idea of food bullying. If we're reading things or looking at things that say that we shame a food, we blame a food, it's all of that, get rid of it. Unfollow, don't, because that doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so eating from the consistent standpoint, here's what meals can do. We think about both meal and snack. Some people like the idea of mini meals. Not everybody necessarily says I have breakfast, lunch, dinner, but maybe I'm doing smaller meals throughout the day. Now, there are also people out there that say, well, you need to eat small, more frequent meals for your metabolism. We're not rats, nor are we guinea pigs or hamsters. You don't have to. I mean, if you're eating 2 or 3 times a day, that's enough as far as your body is concerned. More than that is sometimes more, not helping your body to be more efficient at burning the calories. But if we're trying to get our needs met across the board for protein, for fiber, etc., it's really hard to do that if you just eat twice a day. It's a little easier to do that, maybe 3.5. times of eating over the day. People will also say, one of my favorites, no eating after 7 o'clock. How many of you ever heard that before? Okay. All right. What happens at 7:05? Nothing. Oh, well, you know what? I'm up until midnight, but I have locked the refrigerator door. At 7, I have locked myself in the bedroom. I will not eat after 7 o'clock. You're up at midnight and you're hungry. And you know what happens in the morning? You wake up and there's little foam or feathers coming out of your mouth because you've eaten your pillow in a fit of hunger overnight. There is nothing to this. Many countries of the world, people do not sit down to their evening meal until 10 o'clock at night, and they are fine. We don't like people to just start eating at 7 at night because that means you have all those hours during the day when you didn't. But that's really a lot of nonsense out there. Thinking about the look of the plate. What's on the plate? Is it appealing to me from an eye perspective? Is there enough there? Oh, I'm trying to be mindful of what I'm eating, so let me eat something the size of a postage stamp. Where is it? Oh, that's not going to be satisfying at all. So that is really important. And then the hydration, right? Our friendship bracelet, but this is a part of it. We think just food, it's not. It's fluid as well. And realize that fruits and vegetables are part of your fluid intake. If you have a glass of milk, that's part of your fluid intake. And even coffee and tea, they do not dehydrate the body. Caffeine is not a diuretic. It counts as a fluid for the body. The only fluid that does not really count is alcohol, unfortunately. So those of you that were kind of doing the math, oh, you know, I need to have 90 to 125 ounces of fluid a day. I think that's a six-pack or more. No, that will not work as part of your fluid, but all the other things will. And when we think about attitude, it's body self-talk. Every one of us in this room is probably really good about building up the person next to you, your students, family, etc. When it comes to our own bodies, think about the words that you use. No, he says to me, I'm just gorgeous, fabulous, blah, 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 because most of us wouldn't do that every day. But there's nothing wrong with a little bit of self-preening and a little bit of self-congratulation to say, yes, I'm here. I'm existing. I'm doing the best that I can. So that means thrive and not deprive. I'm really a big fan of thrive and strive in 2025. It kind of goes along with the combatitude. And then the idea of nurture, does the food taste good? Because if it doesn't, let's find door number 2. Okay, this is what I use very often as my performance plate example. So when I say that to you, and performance could mean, you know, I want to do great at my job. It's not just about what I'm doing when I go to the gym or if I'm running a 10K or skiing or whatever on the Black Diamond Slopes. It doesn't matter. So the performance plate is basically 50% of the plate is produce. If somebody says, I'm using a canned or frozen vegetable, not always a fresh one, it does not have to be organic. The body doesn't care. Nutritionally, it is the same. But 50% of that plate is produce. About 25% to 30% of the plate is protein, however we define that to be. If it's something animal-sourced, plant-sourced, some combination of both. And the remainder of the plate is whatever we use as that general term of carb, which is not short for carburetor. Carb. So, you know, that is bread, rice, pasta, quinoa, cereals, corn, potatoes, all of it. So when people say, oh, I'm addicted to carbohydrate, like somebody lying in a gutter with a bagel and a brown paper bag. No, you're not, because it doesn't work that way. It truly does not work that way. It also includes in the carbohydrate category sweets, because they are a carbohydrate. Alcohol is part of that category. And then we customize it with what we choose to use as the fats, what we choose to use for the flavors that we add to food. I love things spicy. The hotter, the better. If tears are coming out of my eyes and my nose, I know it's a good meal. And then the beverages that we choose. So the idea of this, I can get some satisfaction. I'll spare you my voice and Rolling Stones. But nonetheless, this is what people say. 2 to 3 Americans say they feel satisfied by what they eat. How many of you would say that 100% of the time you're satisfied with the foods that you eat? 75% of the time. 50% of the time. Okay, so we're already not representative of this group. Okay, so this is a really important consideration. Taste, texture, temperature, how it feels in the gut, All of those things are the determinant of whether or not a food is satisfying to you. All right, so portions. What about portion? There are measuring cups on the table, and they're there for a reason. When I talk to my players, I always say to them, never eat anything larger than your head, and that is with their helmets off, because there's a lot of fat heads, a lot of them. But when we think about this is, okay, if you buy chicken breast in a package, it's pretty much portion. You're not getting a big piece of chicken, it's in portion. If you buy eggs, there's one egg per component of the carton, right? It is that way. We could buy an individual yogurt, though you can buy one potato. You can't really go into a grocery store and buy one slice of bread. You're kind of obligated to the loaf because they don't like it when you rifle through the food. You can't buy one strand of pasta or one kernel of rice. You're buying the bag. You can't buy one flake of cereal. You're buying the box. You can't buy one cracker. And those are the things that I think are critically important to be aware of. It doesn't mean we have to be obsessive with, but to know. Flip and read. The most important information, I think, on a label is serving size. Oh, who knew? It wasn't a whole bowl of grape nuts, which at that point your jaw would be in traction. What is the serving size? It's 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup. Small. That's small. So I do think awareness of it is really important. Sometimes we slow down the rate of eating. That helps, because we're going to feel more satisfied if we're taking a little bit longer to eat. The utensil down between bites. The handheld food down between bites slows down the rate of eating. Recognizing fullness cues. This is one of the things that many of the people on the weight loss medications say they had no clue of what that felt like until they were on the medications, and now they can become acutely aware of, oh, I feel more satisfied. Part of that as well is the medications slow down emptying of the gut, and that's why people feel fuller for longer. We can change the size of our plate. We have the same plates in our home that we did when we got married, and we'll be 46 years this year married. My husband is a saint. I mean, truly, listen, putting up with this, not easy on any given day. But I won't buy new plates because what I'm seeing out there look like trays in a cafeteria. What is that? It doesn't even fit into the cabinet. So plates make a difference in the size. A juice glass. It's really hard to find a juice glass. There's a juice glass. There's a mug. You know, oh, can I have the urn when I go to Starbucks? No, I don't want the urn. I just want a cup of coffee. You can't do that because they don't understand what you're saying when you say that. All right. The idea of single-serve portion. Now, one of the things about this, you'll pay more to buy them that way. You don't have to do that. You can portion it out yourself if you want to, and something that's recyclable, reusable, is a way of putting that pause into the equation. The idea of chewing thoroughly. It's really much better for your digestive tract to do that. Oh, look, there's this big hunk of meat going down my esophagus. Don't do that. Take the time to chew the food that you eat. Think about the serving size on the label, and maybe minimizing some of the things that we would deem to not have as many health-promoting things, or maybe the size of what those things are on the plate are ways of changing our portions. So why don't people do it? We don't want to be told what not to do. Don't tell me I can't have that portion of food. And most of us are this way. How many of you, show of hands, would say, whatever's in front of you, that's what you're eating? Right? How many of you have been members of the Clean Plate Club, have grown up with that, right? Okay. Where are you going to put that food? You can't put it in a post office box and send it somewhere, because we can't. So if we, from the get-go, change the amount of food. I hate it when somebody says, and I have other colleagues who do this, tell people, you know what, just leave some food on your plate. Who the hell wants to do that? We don't want to do that. Do it before you sit down and eat. I'm giving myself a smaller portion. I'm not serving family style at home, because if we do, how did my hand end up in the mashed potato? I don't know. But if I do it from the kitchen, I have to physically get up if I want to have more, so it becomes more intentional type of eating. Portioning is really not time consuming. It isn't. It's a pretty simple thing to do with having containers, and you just put it in containers when you get home. That's the beauty of ice cube trays. And we all have things that we use that are leftovers, leftover pumpkin. We're going to use that in the recipe today. What do you do with the leftover? Put it in ice cube trays and freeze it, and then you're not throwing it away, and it's portioned for the next time you need to use it. And not wanting to be rigid. I don't want you to be rigid. I want you to be aware. So what about protein? When we think about protein, we think about it in 4 ways. Quality of what we have, quantity of what we have, the timing of what we have, and should it be food or supplement. I would argue food more, and sometimes a supplement is not considered to be a replacement for, it is a complement to. That's the way it's supposed to be used. How many of you in this room have ever used collagen before? A lot of people putting it into their coffee in this morning. All right, I'm not going to yuck your yum, but I will tell you this, is collagen is a very poor quality protein. So if somebody says, well, good for me, I use collagen in the morning, but I didn't necessarily have any other protein sources, no. It may have some use, particularly from the cosmeceutical approach and sometimes from the joint approach, although it really depends upon whether it's medical grade. But I'm just doing collagen in my smoothie, but in my smoothie I only have fruits and vegetables and collagen is my protein. It isn't. So that's where the quality thing makes a very, very big difference. So when we think about even people that are plant-based, that's not protein devoid. When you're plant-based, you still need to include it. So people that are not eating animal source protein are using soy-based foods. They're using beans and other legumes. They're using nuts. They're using seeds. They're using vegetables. They're using grains as a way of getting their needs met. But they have to use larger amounts of those foods to get the same amount of protein as they would if they use animal source. Not a right or wrong. It's just a fact. So, and then the other thing is that protein is important for our immune system. This is the time of the year, it's cough and cold, we look at each other and say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You know, and like the mask over ourselves because, you know, and I would just tell you this story because this is really pretty funny. We were in Seattle this summer. My husband had a meeting, and we happened to be there for summer solstice, which is a very fascinating thing that happens in Seattle because everybody walks around nude, which in and of itself is fascinating. But there were a lot of people with masks on, but not on that part of the body. So here I have a mask with the rest of us like, put a cover on that, put some pants on. How hard is this? My husband was horrified. It was bizarre. I don't know why I told you that, it was just bizarre. But you know, when we think about supporting the immune system, that's why I mentioned it. So people that are taking colloidal silver and doing all this stuff for your immune system, you support the immune system by having enough protein because that is part of the production of antibodies. So the things that protein does that is not just related to the amount of muscle and bone we have are critically important for the body. So this means that ideally it's more even distribution over the day. And I'm not saying everybody should have 120 grams of protein a day. What I am saying is that the dietary guidelines, as they are right now, recommend about 0.8 gram per kilogram, which is basically 0.4 grams per pound. And that's probably not enough for most people. That doesn't mean we have to have 2 grams of protein per pound body weight. That's excessive. We probably don't always even need to have 1. But if we are physically active, we need more. Because when we exercise, we break down muscle. So the goal is to restore it, which means you have to be consuming enough protein over the course of the day. So more even distribution instead of, oh, for breakfast I had a piece of toast, for lunch I had a salad with 4 chickpeas, and for dinner I ate a steer. All right, we don't want to do that. So when we think about the amount of protein in foods, and this is just to show you, if anybody wants the slides, I'm more than happy to share. But when we think about foods that we eat, so for instance, eggs. So 3 whole eggs is 21 grams of protein, but you would have to eat 21, or 6 egg whites to get that same thing. So you're throwing away the yolk. Half of the protein in an egg is the yolk. It's not just in the white. When we look at something like hamburger, the mayonnaise jar lid size, that's 3 ounces. The size of your smartphone, that's 3 ounces. So for some of us, that might be enough, or maybe even a little bit more. Even with a lot of my very large guys, many of them are consuming protein far in excess of what they need. More is not better, it's just more. And we don't have room on the plate for the other things that we need. When we think about things like yogurt, look at the difference between them. Why is a Greek-style yogurt higher? It has to do with the way that it's made. So you're filtering off some of the carbohydrate and leaving behind a higher amount of protein that's there. One of the recipes, or 2 of the recipes today, we're going to use yogurt in. Okay. Or bacon, yes, but 7 slices to get 21 grams of protein. You have to eat a lot of bacon to get there. All right, conversely, what about plant-based foods? Do we get protein in plant-based foods? We do. But look at the quantities. 1 1/4 cups of hummus. That's a lot of hummus to eat. That's a lot. Even if you love it, that's a lot. 5 tablespoons of peanut butter. Oh my God, my jaw is stuck shut. I can't open it anymore because I've had the paper. And one of the things about this is it's not just how much you have to have the calories of. 2 cups of almonds, that's a lot of almond. There's nothing wrong with eating them, it's just be aware that the portion sizes, you have to have more to get that same amount of protein because plant-based foods are also sources of carbohydrate. They're not